Hey everyone, welcome back to my writing analysis series. So, Wednesday Season 2 is coming out this year, and before we all dive back into the world of Nevermore Academy, I want to take a step back and really talk about Season 1. Because let's be real, it was a massive hit, but was it actually as well written as it could have been? Now, don't get me wrong, I love Jenna Ortega. In fact, I think she single-handedly carries the show. The cast? Incredible. The cinematography? Stunning. But when you really start looking at the story itself, there's something off. The show is juggling so many different elements: the prophecy, the murder mystery, the romance, and the whole school life aspect. Instead of blending them seamlessly, it often feels like the show is trying to do too much at once. And that brings me to today's big question: could Wednesday have been stronger if it had better focus? Did the romance with Tyler actually add to the story, or did it take away from the mystery? And what about the school life aspect? Was it underdeveloped compared to everything else going on? Stick around, because we're about to break it all down. If you ask me, the whole prophecy storyline? Completely unnecessary. The core of a good murder mystery is letting the protagonist figure things out on their own, through intelligence, deduction, and instincts, not relying on some predetermined fate to guide them. The moment you introduce a prophecy, it changes the dynamic. Instead of Wednesday uncovering the truth with her own skills, she gets handed supernatural visions that conveniently push her in the right direction. And honestly, that takes a lot of the fun out of it. Now, if you know me, you know I love a good detective story. One of my all-time favorites is Detective Conan. If you haven't heard of it, it's a long-running manga and anime from Japan that follows a young detective solving mysteries with logic and observation. It's one of those stories where every single clue matters, and you get to piece everything together alongside the protagonist. That's what makes a great mystery: it keeps you engaged, trying to figure things out for yourself. And I feel like Wednesday missed that opportunity by leaning too heavily on the prophecy as a storytelling shortcut. Instead of forcing in supernatural fate, I think the show should have leaned more into the school life aspect, but in a way that serves the main plot rather than competing with it. Think of something like Get Out or After, where the setting creates tension in the background while the core story stays in focus. Nevermore Academy had so much potential to be this rich, layered environment where the murder mystery and Wednesday's personal journey could have played out naturally. Instead, it often felt like the show was juggling too many things at once: the prophecy, the school drama, the romance, the murder mystery, all competing for attention. That's why I believe the story should have centered around two things: the romance between Wednesday and Tyler, and the murder mystery. These two elements could have been woven together to make the mystery feel more personal, more engaging, and ultimately, more satisfying. But instead, we got a storyline that felt scattered and, at times, unfocused. But what do you think? Was the prophecy necessary, or do you agree that it took away from the detective work? Let me know your thoughts, because up next, we're diving even deeper into the relationship between Wednesday and Tyler. Was it well written, or did it need some serious reworking? I know some people argue that the romance in Wednesday was unnecessary, but personally, I think it was actually one of the stronger aspects of the show, at least from a storytelling perspective. With Tyler being the Hyde, the romance could have added an entirely new layer to the mystery, making his eventual reveal a devastating plot twist. But because the series was juggling so many different elements, his reveal ended up feeling unearned and, honestly, a little out of place. I mean, think about it: Wednesday doesn't even piece it together herself. It just comes to her in a vision. Now, I don't mind the fact that she has visions, that's part of her character. But if they were going to use them as a storytelling device, they should have taken a more strategic approach. A great example of how visions can be used effectively is in That's So Raven. If you're not familiar with it, it was a Disney Channel series from the early 2000s about a teenage girl named Raven Baxter who has the ability to see glimpses of the future. But here's the thing: her visions never give her the full story. Instead, they act as a trigger mechanism, setting her off on a mission to interpret what she saw and prevent, or accidentally cause, whatever is going to happen. The fun of the show came from the fact that Raven would misinterpret her visions, leading to all sorts of chaos and misunderstandings. Now, imagine if Wednesday had used her visions in a similar way, where they weren't just handing her the answers, but instead acted as clues she had to decode, sometimes leading her in the wrong direction. That would have made the mystery so much more compelling and would have given her more agency as a detective rather than relying on supernatural convenience. Speaking of how the mystery could have been handled better, I would have structured Wednesday more like the 2004 thriller Taking Lives, starring Angelina Jolie. Now, I'm not saying the ending of that movie was perfect, but the plot twist? That was executed beautifully. Quick summary of Taking Lives. The basic premise of Taking Lives follows an FBI profiler, played by Angelina Jolie, who is tracking a serial killer that assumes the identities of his victims. As she investigates, she forms a connection with a key witness, played by Ethan Hawke. But as the case unfolds, things get more complicated, and the real killer's identity is revealed in a shocking twist that completely reframes everything. Now, imagine if Wednesday had followed a similar structure, where the romance wasn't just a side story but an integral part of the mystery. If the show had really leaned into the idea that Tyler wasn't just Wednesday's love interest, but the key to the case she was solving, his reveal as the Hyde would have hit so much harder. Instead of just dropping the answer in her lap with a vision, the show could have built tension by having her gradually uncover more and more unsettling details about Tyler, leading to a moment where everything clicks, not because of fate, but because of her own intelligence. That's the version of Wednesday I would have loved to see. But what do you think? Should the romance have played a bigger role in the mystery, or do you think it was unnecessary altogether? Stick around, because next, we're going to talk about what Wednesday and Tyler's relationship could have looked like if it had been developed more intentionally. Now, let's talk about something that felt really off to me, Wednesday's reaction to Tyler being the Hyde. I mean, seriously, did that not feel out of character? If you've watched the Addams Family movies from the 1990s, yes, the ones with Christina Ricci, you know the Addams Family thrives on the macabre. They don't just tolerate murder and crime, they practically celebrate it. Uncle Fester literally robs a bank at one point, and Wednesday casually mentions that he once went to prison for eating a Girl Scout. There's also another uncle who was imprisoned overseas for a few years, though it's unclear if it's the same uncle or a different one. Either way, crime is just part of their legacy. So tell me why Wednesday, who has been raised in a family where chaos and darkness are a way of life, reacts to Tyler's reveal like it's the most horrifying thing in the world. If anything, shouldn't she have been intrigued? Shouldn't she have found it fascinating that Tyler was just as unhinged as she was? But instead, the show completely walks back on the Addams family's upside-down morality. It tries to convince us that Wednesday is somehow against murder, even though she clearly delights in the concept of violence throughout the series. That's a huge inconsistency in her character. Now, let's talk about how this could have been handled better. First off, the series could have explored dual perspectives, not just Wednesday's, but Tyler's as well. Think about it, Wednesday sees the world as dull, annoying, and beneath her. She's constantly unimpressed by Nevermore Academy, by her classmates, by the so-called outcasts who don't even feel like real outcasts to her. On the other hand, Tyler is a literal outcast from the outcasts. Nevermore Academy doesn't even accept Hydes because they're considered too dangerous. He doesn't belong in Jericho, and he doesn't belong in Nevermore. So where would he belong? You know who would accept him? The Addams Family. This is right up their alley. Imagine a version of Wednesday where the show's timeline extends over a full school year instead of just one semester. Tyler could have been invited to visit the Addams family estate at Morticia and Gomez's request, maybe because Thing tells them that Wednesday has taken an unusual interest in a normie boy. And let's be real, Morticia and Gomez know their daughter. She doesn't just gravitate toward any normal teenager. She barely tolerates most people, including her own classmates. She even considers werewolves and sirens beneath her, so the fact that she's spending time with Tyler? That's enough to make her parents very curious. Now, imagine if we got to see the Addams family through Tyler's perspective. At first, he'd be unsettled. Who are these people? Why do they love death, destruction, and all things creepy? But then, little by little, he might actually start to like it. Maybe even enjoy it. For the first time, he wouldn't feel like an outsider. And as he gets closer to the Addams family, he'd start to confide in Wednesday, dropping hints that he has a secret, a dark one. He'd try to tell her about the Hyde killings, but would she even see that as a bad thing? Or would she see it as something thrilling? Something fascinating? This would have completely changed the dynamic of their relationship. Instead of his reveal being some out-of-nowhere, half-baked plot twist, it would have been a slow-burning tension between them. A mystery that was unraveling in ways Wednesday didn't even realize. But instead, what did we get? A rushed vision dump that told Wednesday the answer instead of letting her figure it out on her own. And in the end, the romance and the mystery felt completely separate, when they should have fed into each other. So, what do you think? Would Wednesday have been better if it leaned into the twisted, upside-down morality of the Addams family? Should the romance have played a bigger role in the mystery? So, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. The first season of Wednesday had all the right ingredients for a compelling story, an eerie gothic setting, a fascinating protagonist, and a murder mystery that could have kept audiences on the edge of their seats. But instead of focusing on a tightly woven narrative, the show spread itself too thin. Between the prophecy, the school drama, the murder mystery, and the romance, it tried to do too much at once. And in doing so, it didn't fully commit to any of them. If the writers had streamlined the story, keeping the focus on the murder mystery while intertwining it more naturally with the romance, the show would have felt more cohesive. Tyler's reveal as the Hyde would have had a stronger emotional payoff if it had been built up gradually, with actual detective work from Wednesday instead of a sudden vision. The romance could have served as a tool to deepen the mystery, rather than feeling like an afterthought. And by leaning into the Addams family's signature dark humor and upside-down morality, the show could have played with more interesting ideas, like the possibility that Tyler might have actually fit in with the Addams family, rather than being a straight-up antagonist. At the end of the day, Wednesday is still a fun, entertaining show, carried by an incredible performance from Jenna Ortega. But with stronger writing and a more focused narrative, it could have been so much more. Hopefully, Season 2 will learn from these missteps and deliver a story that feels more earned, more engaging, and most importantly, more Wednesday Addams. What do you think? Do you agree that the show could have handled its romance and mystery better? Let me know, and stay tuned for the next episode where we'll dive into another aspect of Wednesday that could have been improved. Thanks for listening.